President Biden, who started his trip to Israel with US promising to ask some tough questions, has told Prime Minister Netanyahu that the hospital strike on Gaza seems to have been done by the other team, referring to the Palestinian terrorists.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
Let's open this up. Former Israeli Ambassador Arthur Lenk is now joining us live. Mr. Lenk, thank you for speaking to Times Now. At the outset, let me begin by asking you, what are your thoughts on this hospital attack in Gaza?
Well, I think, good afternoon. Firstly, I think that it was a great tragedy. And everyone is sad to see disasters and loss of life. But what's truly horrific about all of this is it was a missile from Gaza intended to kill Israeli civilians, but instead killed its own civilians. So last week, the Hamas killed thousands of Israelis. Today, they killed hundreds of Palestinians. Hamas is just killing everybody in their sight, Israelis and Palestinians alike.
Now, Mr. Lenk, while the IDF claims that, and you're obviously echoing that stand, that Israel has got nothing to do with it, the world is not entirely in agreement. Russia has demanded, for instance, satellite imagery.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We've put out imagery. You just had a discussion just before I came on of showing exact imagery that we shared. We're sharing the information that we know. And I don't know, I think it's a little bit ironic that suddenly the Russians are interested in human rights. But in all seriousness, Israel cares about human rights. And Israel cares about humanitarian concerns, which is why there's a humanitarian corridor. There are people that were encouraged to leave. There was no humanitarian corridor in southern Israel last Saturday. There was no humanitarian break. There was just killing and raping and cutting off heads and shooting down people at a music festival. That's the reason that we're all here, and that you're covering this wall to wall because Hamas killed Israelis. And now today, because last night, Hamas killed Palestinians.
Now, it's interesting that, you are saying the IDF has released radar data, audio. There's also a video clip. But Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called it a horrifying war massacre. And he's vowed that this incident will not be allowed to pass without accountability.
Well, but are you surprised? This is not the first time that our neighbors have screamed to the world, claiming massacres, claiming disasters, and a day goes by, or 2 days goes by, or a week goes by, and we find out that it was nonsense, that it was just not true. And look, the Palestinian people are not our enemy. They're our neighbors. We want to find a way to live like good neighbors with them. But it's not possible when there's a group like Hamas, that, by the way, should be recognized as a terror group by every country, I think India included. But when somebody's coming out to try to destroy the world's only Jewish state, well, we're going to have to respond and protect our people and hope that this will turn a page and give an opportunity for Israelis and Palestinians to be good neighbors again.
So, Mr. Lenk, let me then ask you, what happens next? Because we are talking about innocents being collateral damage here, and the number is increasing by the minute.
I'm not disagreeing with you, sir. And I'm totally agreeing, that innocents were killed last night. Palestinians were killed by Palestinians. That really should be the headline. That's the story. The fact that they tried to fool the world it's interesting. Here we are, a week and a half after the massacre in Israel. We still don't know the number of how many Israelis were killed. But 5 minutes after it happened, they were telling the international media that they knew it was 500 people. Now, every one is a world and a tragedy. And again, I hope I'm being clear. I'm not.
No, no, I understand that, Mr.
Israel.
Lenk. I understand
we
your
are not
sentiment.
celebrating the loss
Let me
of
play
life of
devil's
Palestinians.
advocate. Now, what would you tell those who are saying that your version, the version of IDF, is plain propaganda, that you're using doctor clips, video, audio to make a point?
Well, it's not true. It's just not true. Israel is too much of a democracy with a too critical domestic conversation to do that sort of thing. And it's interesting. I don't know if you were on the air last night while it was happening. There were about 2 hours went by maybe 3 hours went by from the event until the Israeli army came out with some findings. And there was some criticism on Israeli television. I was watching the evening news at the time here in Israel, and people were saying, the whole world's talking about it. They're calling it a massacre. Where are we? And IDF people said, do you know what? We have to find the truth. Yes, let them yell for another hour or two. Let them know as long as it takes. If it's our responsibility, we'll take responsibility. It turned out it wasn't. And I think that we're being incredibly open about it, about what we know, and we're going to continue to do that. And look, the President of the United States landed here earlier today, and you played the clip just a moment ago. We showed him some evidence, and you know he's a serious world leader, and I think that people, including you, find it convincing what we're showing.
No, I was only playing devil's advocate, and I'm asking you questions.
All respect.
And Mr. Lenk, Biden has said that the other side, the other team is responsible. We also have reactions coming in as we speak. James Cleverly, he's put out a tweet. He says, last night too many jumped to conclusions around the tragic loss of lives at the Al Ahli hospital. Getting this wrong would put even more lives at risk. Wait for the facts, report them clearly, accurately, cool heads must prevail. What does this support mean to you, the support from US, now this tweet by UK?
Well, I think they're important because I think that all of us want the fighting to end. We want peace to come to my region. There's a deep appreciation. You mentioned the United States and the United Kingdom. From our side, there's a deeper appreciation for India, for the comments of your president last week. Actually, in fact, even for his comments earlier today, being careful. And exactly that's what I think that the British minister was just talking about, that you're quoting. And I think that Mr. Modi did exactly that. He hasn't seen all of the evidence. He hasn't seen, but he was careful and prudent, I think. And I have to say that from an Israeli perspective, we respect that. Don't believe everything that you hear at the very, very beginning. Look into it. Ask questions. And you know, there's no international media in Gaza. Zero. You know why? Not because we won't let them in, because Hamas won't let them in. Hamas won't let an independent Indian or American or French journalist tell their story. We saw yesterday what happened with the United Nations, right? The United Nations Relief Refugee Organization found that lots of their equipment,
medicines, fuel, looted by Hamas,
were stolen by Hamas.
True.
And they tweeted it out. But an hour later, they withdrew it. We know why they withdrew it, right? They withdrew it because their lives were at risk. Because if Hamas basically is holding them hostage the way that they're holding 200 Israelis hostage.
You're talking about peace, Mr. Lenk. What is the road forward? How do we get there?
I'm only a mere retired diplomat. I wish I knew all of the answers. But in all seriousness, Israel knows how to make peace. We have peace with our neighbors in Egypt. We have peace with our neighbors in Jordan. We have peace with Gulf countries. We have peace with Muslim countries in Northern Africa and in Central Asia. We know how to make peace. We know how to be a good neighbor. What we need, all of us, and the truth is Palestinians need this more than anyone else, is responsible leaders who are looking to be good neighbors, who want to make lives better for their public. You know, we left Gaza unilaterally 20 years ago. And they could have become Singapore. They could have. They had every opportunity in the world. They chose instead to become Hamastan. And that's a tragedy for Palestinians, for Israelis, and for all us all over the world that we're talking about this rather than talking about what the world really needs in 2023.
Okay, finally, Mr. Lenk, before I let you go, President Biden has said that Hamas is worse than ISIS. Netanyahu was alongside Olaf Scholz, and he said that Hamas is the new Nazis. Where is this headed now?
Well, I think Israel is going to have to protect its civilians and find a way that Hamas won't be able to hurt Israelis or Palestinians anymore. And we're going to do what we need to do so that our citizens, I mean, think about this. If you lived along the border and your house was destroyed and tomorrow the house was rebuilt, would you go back and live there on the Gaza border? Of course you wouldn't. There has to be a situation that people can go on with their lives, both in Israel and in Gaza. And the reason they can't is Hamas.
You were talking about Egypt, Mr. Lenk. This is my final question. Let's talk about what's happening at the Rafah border. Thousands of innocent Gazans are stranded there in the hope that they'll be allowed to move out. But Hamas is not allowing them to, and Egypt is not doing its bit.
Well, I'm not Hamas and I'm not Egypt, so I'm not sure how I can comment on that. But I'm saying that with a little bit of a smile. But it's tragic. Innocent people are caught in the middle because Hamas is sending rockets to try to kill Israelis, but instead kills Palestinians and is holding its own people hostage. It's holding my people hostage too. Don't get me wrong. But it's holding, if you care about Palestinians, then you need to stand up to Hamas.
Mr. Lenk, apart from the war on the ground, the rocket strikes and the butchery, do you also believe that there's a raging propaganda warfare which is going on with also academicians now getting into it? It's a war of battle of narratives.
Well, sure. You know what? We saw that last night, right? When we've been discussing it, this whole conversation about a tragic event happens at a hospital in Gaza. The Palestinians rush and tell you 500 casualties. I don't know who sat there with an abacus counting. It's not possible. But it took a few minutes, and Israel explained, I think, in a rational, not aggressive, not browbeating manner of what we think happens. And don't buy it just because I say it and I'm smiling at you. Take a look at it. Look at the film. Look at the logic. Look at who benefits from hitting a hospital. If we hit a hospital, it's tragic. We lose. We don't win. If Hamas hits their own people's hospital, somehow they win. It's the world on its head.
I leave our viewers with the last point that you made. Let them ponder over this and reach the conclusion. Mr. Arthur Lenk, thank you for speaking to Times Now. Viewers, taking a quick break. Stay with us.
Thanks, Pranesh.